On mass scale basics, t-shirts, printed logo tees and things like that in Guatemala, they're churning out quite a bit and their productivity is good, but those are simpler garments again.
Yes.
So understanding what a country does well and doesn't do well. You don't want to walk down into Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador and start doing very, very complicated items, because that's just not the country for that.
Let's move over to Bangladesh. This is an area, I believe it's known for higher quantities. Like if somebody has a volume program, this is a good place to go. Tell me why.
Being in Bangladesh and looking at the size of the factories, there are large production lines on multiple floors, and being in both Dhaka and Chittagong, you see a huge amount of consistency with the factory size. And almost every conversation when I'm in Bangladesh about production is, can you fill a line? Can we keep lines consistently running? So they're really focused on large production, basic production. They don't do a lot of very, very complicated finishes, not a bunch of complicated assembly work. There are some outerwear factories in Chittagong that do some nice outerwear pieces, but it's still very large minimums. 8,000 units of a style, before they really want to sit and talk to you in outerwear. And then in the factories that are doing sportswear, they really want 20, 30, 40,000 unit conversations. They can be made up of maybe multiple colors with different prints, but they, if it's doing a t-shirt or something like that, but they still want 20 or 30,000 units just to begin the conversation. There are people that will talk to you about doing less quantities, but I think doing the research on what those factories look like, what's their long-term expectations, you can get some short-term gains if you can get into a factory to do some smaller quantities, but it's not really a long-term conversation.
You have been traveling in India for over 30 years. You have this long history there. What was it about this country that you saw opportunity in?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the country's changed so much over the years. But in the early days, it really was the people. And in our business, people make a big difference. And different cultures have different strengths and weaknesses. And I really found the Indian people, especially obviously the ones that we interacted with in our business, to be very entrepreneurial, really focused on overcoming obstacles, achieving positive results. And India, in the early days, there were a lot of obstacles. So these people that were in the business just had their hands full, but they figured it out. And I was really impressed by that. And they didn't put up a lot of excuses. They didn't put up a lot of roadblocks, with new creative ideas. It was just, they're just so ingratiating and warm. I really enjoyed the country initially because of that.
They seem to just take the information and roll with it. There's not a lot of pushback. So if, we need samples and we need them by a certain date in order to make the sale, they're almost like partners. They want to make the sale with you.
Yeah.
And they will do what they need to do to turn it around. And they've always been very responsive to our needs. And I think we stay as competitive as we do is because of our turnaround. China is very, very quick. And they have a large assortment of fabrics available, trims, and labor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been the conversation stopper when somebody says, I want made in America. I'm like, okay, how do you feel about this MSRP and this margin? And they're like, well, that doesn't sound good.
That's not gonna
my
work.
customer won't pay that, and I need to make money. And that has certainly been the challenge for Made in America, because you're going to have higher costs. That's the whole conversation that I guess is not being completely addressed in this whole, hey, let's bring everything home. Let's not manufacture overseas. We just don't have the cost, the labor, the laborers that will work on a particular cost that will meet the value, expectations that our consumer has. And so again, when we look at the reality that we're going to have higher production costs, And that's going to translate to higher overall MSRPs.
Yeah.
How is that going to affect this business? And so a couple things can help you there. One is products that have more technology. Two, products that last longer, right? If you
Better.
walk away from the kind of disposable fast fashion world, that's always going to be challenged in the US. But building a robust infrastructure upon better product that's an investment in a wardrobe that lasts longer, people think less about that dollar amount if they see value that will come back to them year after year after year,
Right.
The other thing that's going to help in this case, and again, it's a journey, is the technology and its help in reducing overall costs.
Brett, we certify factories all over the world. In fact, as of right now, sort of closing on the end of the year, we have north of 3,200 factories certified in about 42 different countries around the world, altogether employing just north of 3.25 million workers, which obviously means we have a very large footprint that we're quite proud of. And the details of what we do, as you were saying, Brett, to those that are not familiar, fundamentally is a social audit. We visit every one of these factories, physically inspect the entirety of the property, including dormitories or any other such on-site habitation that they might provide, and make sure that they are in compliance with applicable laws and regulations, starting with whatever local rules that are in place that they are bound by, and then adding on sort of internationally accepted minimum working conditions, norms, and requirements and buyer expectations.